Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of our high-level masterclass. These are really unique, in my opinion, where we take on a certain topic, a certain subject, and we bring in an expert that work closely with marketers, agency owners, and kind of share insights of what their findings are and how they should move. I have Dr. William Attaway here, and let me go ahead and read out my fancy introduction that he probably don't care much about, but let me go ahead and just read this out, just so you get familiar with who he is, and he's a fellow high-level user as well. So, Dr. William Attaway is a executive coach specializing in leadership mindset and productivity, who has been leading teams and coaching leaders for nearly 30 years. He's coached hundreds of agency owners at this point and their teams on 6 continents, helping them navigate and overcome leadership mindset challenges that can be overwhelming. He's spoken at a ton of events like Josh Nelson's Seven-Figure Agency, Alex Shalinsky's Prospecting on Demand. I see Spyglass Ops. Is that John Ali, if I'm not
Totally.
mistaken? Yep.
Yeah.
All In Agency Summit, Extendly with Beyond. And he's written several books as well, from what I understand, around leadership. And we're excited to get this masterclass going because the concept of leadership and team building in the agency world is kind of tricky because you have this entrepreneur that's starting the business and then he has to unbuild the business because it was originally built around the entrepreneurial behaviors, and unpack it and restructure it for the team is what we see all the time. But Dr. Attaway, thanks for saying yes to us. Thanks for saying yes to this master class. We're excited to have you.
Paulson, I'm honored to be here, truly. I mean, as a high level user myself, I've so benefited from what you guys are doing. And to get to give back to the community in a small way, it's just an honor.
Absolutely. So, how did you get into this whole leadership thing, and how did you get into specifically leadership and team building around agency owners? What's that story like?
I've been a student of leadership now for almost 40 years. I had a teacher in high school who invited me to attend my first leadership conference when I was 15 years old. And he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And when I heard and listened to the power of leadership, I was hooked. I'm a third generation entrepreneur. My grandfather started his own business back in the 50s, a kids' clothing store. My dad started his own business back in the 70s, and it was a traditional advertising agency. So think radio, billboards, newspaper, that sort of thing, right? So I grew up in that world. I grew up in the marketing space. Obviously, the digital landscape has changed that world very dramatically, but the principles are still the same. And my heart is truly in line and in sync with the marketing agency owners that are so much a part of the high level community, helping them to overcome the challenges that are part of leading something that is healthy and growing and figuring out how they can get themselves out of their own way.
I love that. What's your journey to high level itself? I know you said you use high level quite heavily.
Mhm.
You were just at one of the events that we had sponsored. I think JB will spend time with
Mhm.
you there, and maybe
Yeah,
Chase was there as well.
he
But
was. Yeah.
what's your journey with high level, with a executive, I guess, leadership type of a business? Is it consulting? Is it coaching? Like, how do I define your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an executive coach. And so I and my team, we work together to help agency owners, to help entrepreneurs, to overcome the leadership challenges that are part of running a successful growing business, help to remove the lids, if you will. For me, High Level started about just over a year ago. Chase and I were actually both speaking to the same event. And we met in the exhibitor area. I was walking around talking to people and met Chase and had heard him talking about high level. And many of my clients had been using it. I'd heard of it, but I thought this is just for agency owners. This is something that's very specific. It's not really something that would benefit my business. And I started talking to Chase, and he did a fantastic job of helping me to see no, no, this could help you. And I was able to reduce my tech stack and reduce my monthly cost and bring everything under one roof. And instead of having to build integrations and hope they work and hope they hold, oh, that one expired. Oh, this one stopped working and having to troubleshoot all that. It's all in one ecosystem. Everything talks natively to each other. And it has been a game changer for our team because once everybody got on the same page, we all understand how this works, building workflows, building campaigns. Like the whole idea of keeping the contacts in the same space, the calendars in the same space, it has revolutionized the way we build everything from funnels to websites, a whole bit.
I love it. Let's dive into leadership. It is misunderstood, at least. I know that much. But you're the expert.
100%.
You're the expert. What
I'm a
what should
fellow
we
student.
what can we expect from this session if you spend the next hour, whatever, spending with you and learning from you? Give us an overarching, spark note of what we're going to learn on this masterclass.
My goal is for you to understand a couple of key principles. One is that your responsibility as a leader is not to get things done. That's what it was when you were an individual contributor, right? Your job was to get things done. As a leader, your job is to get things done through other people. And understanding how you invest in and build your team intentionally, strategically, how you lead in a way that is what I call catalytic, meaning it's about making a difference. It's about creating a significant outsized impact by the levers that you pull.
I love that. So speak to the agency owners. If I'm just starting out, I'm just by myself and I don't have a big
Mhm,
team yet, where do I start? I mean, I know you have some slides that you may want to
mhm.
share and feel free to
Yeah.
pull those up, but I'm just trying to think of how an agency owner should really absorb the content that you have put together here, because I know it's going to be very impactful. It's evergreen as well. It's not like leadership is not going to go away once you learn those skills. But yeah, excited to dive right in.
Yeah. So I'll throw the slides up. And what I want to do today is I want to help you understand some key things about leadership. In the agency world, you started your business, you started your agency because you were really good at providing a product or a service. And as you found success, and as you find success, if you're not to this point yet, you have to hire other people to help you with fulfillment. Well, then one day you wake up and those people are sitting around a table virtually or in person, and they're looking at you to lead, and that's a different skill. And Paul, so one of the challenges I think is that people will take one of two paths. They will either say, "Oh, we'll just flatten the organization, and nobody's really the leader." Well, that's a disaster. That's a terrible path. Don't do that. The other way is to say, "We'll just kind of build the plane while we're flying it. We'll just figure this out as we go along." You can do that, but the challenge is that you are going to hit every ditch along the road as you are trying to figure out where the center line is. I think there's a better way. I want to learn from the experiences of other people. And this is what I do with my clients. I help them to learn from the experience and the knowledge base of other people so that they don't have to make all the mistakes themselves. I'm not going to live long enough to make all the mistakes. I'd like to avoid as many as possible. And so that's why I think learning from mining the stories and the experiences and the lessons of other people, this is how we can go farther than we could alone. This is how we can get there faster. And that's what I do in my work with clients. What I want to talk about today is catalytic team leadership, specifically for high level agency owners. This is something that I have shared in different contexts in different ways. But what I want to do in this community is specifically talk about building a strong team. Now, you may be in the solopreneur phase of your business where it's just you. That's okay. There's some things that I want you to learn now so that when you get to the next step, you're ready. I believe pre-deciding is one of the keys to success. I pre-decide about 80% of my week every week. That way I'm not in the moment trying to, what do I do now? What's the best use of my time right now? I've already pre-decided all that. I do that in my weekly review, which we'll talk about today. I want to help you begin to put things in place so that when you get to the next stage from wherever you are, or if you're in this phase, before you move to the next step, you're ready. You have the right mindset to help you get there. And so that's what we're going to talk about. What I want to do just really quick. Who is this guy? You've read a little bit about me. I specialize. My lanes are leadership, mindset, and productivity. That's what I do. I coach leaders and I coach teams of leaders. And I've been doing that for a long time. And so my knowledge base doesn't just come from leading teams myself, which I've been doing for 30 years, but it's also from all of the leaders that I have coached, from solopreneurs to C-suite leaders of very, very large companies. And those lessons are what I bring to the table. Simon Sinek has a quote that I think is phenomenal. He says, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those people who are in your charge. This is a different model. And some of the people who are watching this may be thinking, well, I thought leadership was about title. I thought it was about telling people what to do. I thought it was about having a bunch of people you can delegate stuff to that you don't want to do. Okay, that's not leadership. That's something else. And so this quote really captures, I believe, a really strong sense of what leadership is. It's about investing in other people, getting things done through other people. But remember, it's about the people who are in your charge. My company, my last book is called Catalytic Leadership. And people often ask me, well, what on earth does that mean? Why do you talk about catalytic so much? And the first thing people typically will say is, the only time I know that word is from a catalytic converter on a car. Like, does this have something to do with my car? Like, what's the story here? It comes out of my story, actually. I went to college as a pre-pharmacy major. And I'd worked in a pharmacy in high school and thought this was a fantastic way to help people in a tangible, practical way. Went to college. And in my brief studies in the pre-pharmacy program, which lasted about 18 months, I hit organic chemistry, which is designed as the washout point. And it did its job. It washed me right out because I discovered how much I despise organic chemistry. I hated it. And it was fantastic because it helped me understand what not to do. In my brief chemistry studies, though, I discovered the power of what's called a catalyst. A catalyst is something that you introduce into a mixture in order to incite or to accelerate significant change, usually irreversible. And as I thought about that, I thought, man, I'd been a student of leadership just for a handful of years at that point. And I thought, every great leader that I had ever learned from or learned about would resonate with that definition. This idea that, man, I could introduce something that's going to incite or accelerate change to make a significant impact. That is the kind of leader I want to be. And I've spent 3 decades now trying to figure out what is it that makes a leader catalytic? What is it that makes a leader really make a difference in what they're doing? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today when it comes to the agency context. How can you lead your agency in a catalytic way that's going to really move the needle and really make a difference? A catalytic leader is somebody who sparks or accelerates significant change or action with a powerful impact. And if you are a business owner, if you're an agency owner, that's what you want. You want to make an impact. This is not just about today being the same as yesterday. This is not just about continuing to run on the treadmill of our businesses. This is about making a difference. And that's what we're going to talk about. The first key that I want to talk about when it comes to this, and this is the one non-negotiable I believe in being a catalytic leader. I put this as the very first principle in my last book. It's choosing to have a teachable spirit. This is a choice that you and I get to make. This is a decision that I make every morning. I want to be the most teachable person in every room, in every environment, in every meeting I go into. That means I walk in asking this question: what can I learn here? What can I learn here? You're meeting with a client and you're listening to them and they're complaining about something. I know that never happens to agency owners, but just imagine with me just for a second, right? Like they're complaining about something. They're saying, "Oh, this isn't where." This is the moment when I teach my clients, I want you to listen beyond just the words that are being said. What is under what is being said? What's beneath it? Listen deeper. Ask yourself, what can I learn here? You can learn from anybody. Sometimes you learn what not to do. It may be that your biggest takeaway from that conversation is, I never want to treat somebody the way that I just got treated. But that can inform how you lead your team, how you talk to clients, how you lead your team to talk to clients. That can inform so many different pieces, but you have to start with a teachable spirit. You have to start with that humility. When you start there, that I believe is the first step toward really making a difference and being catalytic. When I take my daughters, I have two daughters, and when they were young, we would take them to a water park. And my favorite part of a water park was the lazy river. I don't know if you've ever been in the lazy river, Paulson, but it's my favorite. You get in the inner tube and you just float. And there's a little bit of a current. And so you just, man, you're just floating around. Talk about some fantastic think time, just relax time. This is a beautiful picture of a lazy river. Uh, like, this is great. But too many agency owners that I talk to are operating their business this way. They get in the inner tube every morning, they hop in the water, and they just drift. They just float. And they're reacting to whatever is going on. Some of them are more like firefighters, where they're just moving from fire to fire to fire to fire to fire to fire to fire. They're reacting all day long. Well, that's a way to run a business. I think there's a better way. Living this way is drifting. You're drifting through your day, simply reacting to whatever is happening. And you never ever drift your way into excellence. You always drift into mediocrity. And this is one of the biggest challenges I see in agency space. People come to me and they're like, I feel like I'm just stuck. I feel like I'm just stuck. And I'm like, okay, well, help me understand what you mean by that word. And as we dig deeper, what I find is what they're saying is, I'm just I'm just on this treadmill and I feel like I'm not making any ground. I just keep hitting the same problems over and over again. I'm circling the same drains. What they're doing is drifting. And you never drift into excellence. You only drift into mediocrity. And mediocrity inspires no one. This is why I believe we talk about excellence. Excellence inspires other people. Mediocrity inspires nobody. What does it look like to lead in a catalytic way toward excellence? Well, this is moving into the second key. First, you have a teachable spirit. You choose that. You make that choice every day. The second key to catalytic team leadership is discovering how you and your team members are wired. Now, this requires some self work, some of the deeper work. That's the first step here. You're learning more about you. Dr. Benjamin Mays, who was a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr., said this. He said, the tragedy of life is often not in our failure, but rather in our complacency. It's not in our doing too much, but rather in our doing too little. Not in our living above our ability, but rather in our living below our capacities. I love this quote because it illustrates the principle around potential. This is a loaded word. When you're young, maybe you're middle school, high school, even college, and people look at you from around you and they're like, oh man, so much potential. You got so much potential. That's a compliment. But let me tell you, when you're in your 50s or 60s and somebody says, wow, they have so much potential. What happened? What happened there? That's not, because that's potential unrealized. And I think what Dr. Mays was talking about and what the goal of helping to understand your wiring is understanding what your capacity is, what your potential actually is. You know, these questions that I have on the screen, these are questions that I will often ask. What are the behavioral tendencies and limitations of your personality? This is where personality assessments can be incredibly helpful. Things like the DISC assessment, or one that I use all the time, the working genius assessment. How does this affect my communication with other people? We all have tendencies. We all have different ways that we bend. That's normal. That's how we're wired. Understanding that helps us understand how our communication with our team, with our clients, with our family, how is that affected? What do I need to avoid? What are the pitfalls that I need to avoid? Once you ask yourself those questions and you begin to grow in your self-awareness of how you are wired, how you are designed, now, where do I need to grow? And this is where I believe you're intentional in this key. This moves us into the third key, and this is where I want to spend the bulk of our time. The third key to catalytic team leadership is intentionally building up people and teams. This never happens by accident. You never wake up one day and say, oh, wow, I have these incredibly developed team members. I have a team that is, wow, this is so well designed. I didn't mean for that to happen, but here it is. Look at that. It never happens that way. It takes intentionality. You have to choose it, you have to design it. Jim Collins, one of my favorite writers, says in great companies and organizations, your people are not your most important asset. The right people are. This is critical because when it comes to building a team, you have to choose carefully. It's not just anybody who's drawing breath. Hey, I need somebody. I need somebody. Anybody will do. That is never the right answer for a leader who really wants to make a difference in their agency. I was talking to one of my clients. He runs a very successful agency. We were talking about how he chooses team members. And he talked about early in his journey that it really was like, are you breathing? Can you do the job? Okay, great. You're fine. That's fine. Come on in. And his churn rate on his team was incredibly high because he wasn't being selective. He wasn't being intentional in who he was choosing. He wasn't choosing the right people for what he needed them to do. Now, now he has a different filter system, a different model for how he chooses his team members. You know, for some of you, when I talked about wiring, you were thinking about yourself and thinking, yeah, I need to understand how I'm wired. That's self-leadership, and those questions are important. But you also have to understand the next step is how your team is wired so that you can put them in Colin's language to put the right people in the right seats on the bus of your business. If you have the right people in the right seats, you are going to go so much farther and so much faster than you would have otherwise. But it's not just going to happen. You have to design systems so that this can happen. In agency world, it moves so quickly. And I see business owners who are so focused on growth and acquisition. And those are great things. Those are fantastic things. But if you are not giving an equal amount of time to the design of your team, to how you are pouring into and building up your team, I really want to challenge you to do that because this is what will help you scale. This is what will help you scale and grow to the level that you know you're capable of. The people that you lead are not a distraction from the main thing. They are the main thing. I was at a conference recently hearing somebody talking, and they were talking about their team, and they were complaining to me about their team. Oh, they just want something all the time. They're just slacking me all the time. They're just sending me a message. Hey, I need 5 minutes. Well, it's never 5 minutes. Hey, I just need I just need to ask you. And he's like, it's just a distraction from the, and I'm like, hold on. Your team's not a distraction from the main thing. Your job is not to get things done anymore. It's to get things done through other people. The people that you lead are not a distraction from the main thing. They are the main thing. This is a mind shift. When you make this, when you begin to understand this, this changes how you apportion, allocate your time. It changes how you apportion and allocate your attention. Your time is the most valuable thing you have. It is the one non-renewable resource. You can always make more money. You cannot make more time. Neither can I. If we are intentional in how we choose to apportion that and use that, that's what will make the difference. One of my favorite quotes is from Truett Cathy, who was the founder of Chick-fil-A. And he would always talk in a speech. He would say, how do you know if a man or a woman needs encouragement? And then he would get a little grin, a little chuckle. And he would say, if they're breathing. That's how you know. Encouragement is part of this process. For some people, this comes naturally. For some people, it does not. And if this doesn't come naturally to you in your agency, you have to build a system where this becomes more natural for you. You are going to have to do that because this is going to increase retention in a way nothing else will with your team. And if your team's retention goes up, guess what? So does your client retention. There's a trickle-down effect here. You as the leader can be and should be the CEO, the Chief Encouragement Officer. That is your job. Now, I am not suggesting you just blow smoke at people. I am not suggesting that you just try to pump them up and give them fake praise, fake encouragement. That is not helpful. People see right through that. That is not what I'm talking about. But you get more of what you focus on. If you focus on where somebody is winning, if you focus on what they're doing right, remember what is Rewarded is repeated. I want to celebrate their wins. I want to celebrate what they're doing right. I want to see more of that. So I'm going to encourage that so that we see more of it. This is not just going to happen accidentally. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet, Paulson, but this is not just going to happen. You're not going to wake up one day, right? This has to be intentional. It has to be a choice. John Maxwell, encouragement is 51% of leadership. This is not negotiable if you want to lead in the catalytic way. So my question is, do you really need to encourage others? And you may be asking this. In my agency, is it really important that we encourage each other? Does it really matter? Only if you want your team to stick around. Only if you want to increase the retention of your team and your clients. Only if you're interested in high performance, and only if you want to make a difference. If none of those three apply to your agency, then disregard encouragement. Keep doing what you're doing. But I suspect you want those three things to be true. Horst Schulze, who was part of the founding group of the Ritz-Carlton, said, we don't hire people, we select people. You see the intentionality there in the mindset? Now, I want to share with you a system that I have used for a long time with hiring my team members. And this is something that I teach to my clients. It's what I call the Catalytic 5C hiring framework. All five of these start with the letter C because it's easy to remember. And what I want to do is share this framework with you so that you can take this and put this into place, or a version of it, in your agency, right? When I'm looking and evaluating potential candidates to join our team, this is what I do. The first thing I look at is their character. The very first thing. I need somebody who, when they say they're going to do something, they're actually going to do it. I need somebody with that level of integrity. Carey Nieuwhof says, no one will ever pay you to work on your character, but they will fire you if you don't. And that is very true. Character is a non-negotiable. There are environments that can be character reclamation environments. My team is not one of them. I need you to have a solid layer of character, right? Non-negotiable. The second C is commitment. Now, I'm not asking you to stick around for the next 50 years. Okay? I'm not asking for that level of commitment. But what I am asking for is that you're going to be here for a season. I talk in terms of seasons. I think that's more healthy. I'm going to ask you to commit to us for a season. I don't know how long that season is, and most of the time, neither do you. But I need to know you're not going to run down the street next week or next month after we finish onboarding. I need to know you're not going to run down the street just after we kind of begin to meld and form the team together. And I ask that, is this something that you can commit to for the next season? That's important to me. The third C is competency. I need to know that you can do what it is we need you to do. Now, I tend to prefer people who are earlier in their journey for my team, right? And that's because they have less to unlearn. So often when somebody joins a team, they're bringing with them the baggage of the last 5, 10 places that they've worked, the last 5, 10 teams they've been on. They're bringing all this baggage, and they have a way they do things. I tend to lean toward people earlier in their journey. Everybody's a little bit different there, though. And that's not a hard and fast. I've broken that rule more than once, even with my most recent hire, in fact, as I'm talking about it. But I want somebody who has the competency to do this. And by competency, I don't just mean they have a master level of it yet. I mean they have the capacity for it. Competency is way more about capacity and about a teachable spirit than it is about where they are today. That's the third C. The fourth C is chemistry. I bring my team into the hiring process. I want their eyes and ears because they're going to see and hear different things than I see and hear. I've only got one set of eyes, one set of ears, and I hear through my filters and my experience. I want to broaden that circle because this is somebody we're going to be spending a good bit of time with. I need to know if there's good chemistry around the room. That's more intangible, but it is incredibly important. And the last C is culture. Every team, every business, every agency has a culture. You either have one you designed and created on purpose, or you have one you didn't mean to create, but you have a culture. This is how we do it here. This is who we are. This is what matters to us. And if you haven't defined that, let me strongly encourage you to do that because you cannot hit a target that you haven't defined. Culture matters. I've had more than one hire over the years that I didn't evaluate this one well. And they come in and it was a cultural mismatch. What matters to us did not matter to them, and they didn't last. For us, these are some elements of our culture, our team. We work hard and we have fun. And both of those things matter. And that's a tension, and we're not going to resolve it. We believe the mission matters, that excellence inspires people, and we give our work our best. We're not putting that on the negotiating table. We give the last 10% of honesty to one another. What I mean by that is the first 90% of honesty between people is usually pretty easy to give. We have no problem doing that. But the last 10% is what we hold back. And the reason we hold that back is because we're afraid that it's going to break or damage the relationship, that we're going to offend. We might get fired. They might leave. So we hold back the last 10%. And the problem with holding that back is that the last 10% of honesty is where the magic is. That's where transformation lives. And so with our team, I make this clear from day one. I want us to be a last 10% team. I want us to share that with each other because what we're doing matters that much. I need that transformation to be part of who we are. So we are a last 10% team. I'm going to share the last 10% of honesty with you, and I expect it from you. And you can always tell when somebody's new to the team. They come in and, man, they're watching other people share the last 10% for a meeting or two, and they're holding back because they've never been in an environment like that maybe. And then the first time they'll give like 3% of it. And then they kind of shy back and they're like, oh, is this okay? Am I about to get slammed? And that's when we really pour on the praise and encouragement. Like, hey, thanks for sharing this. I'm so glad you did that. Even if I don't particularly like it in the moment, I'm going to encourage it because what's rewarded is what's repeated. And the next time, they give maybe 5 or 6% until we get to the 10% and we get the whole thing. That's part of our culture, and we've defined that and we celebrate that. Another one, we believe in and we are for one another. We have each other's backs. That's an important piece of our culture that we never want to get rid of. You have to define what your culture is going to look like in your agency. You have to decide what matters most to you. Maybe some of these are inspiring thoughts in your mind, things that that's similar to something for us that matters a lot. Great, write it down. Culture is what actually happens, not what you say. If we just said these things, then they just become words on the wall instead of what happens down the hall. I want to define intentionally what's going to happen down the hall, not just words. Communication with your team is a non-negotiable. You have to communicate with your team. You have to, if you're going to build them up and build this into a high capacity, high performing team, there has to be regular communication. Companies with clear communication strategies experience higher client satisfaction and loyalty. This was from Harvard Business Review. Right? Communication is not negotiable. Again, I go back to this example. They just want something all the time. All they want to do is talk and communicate. Yes, because communication matters. That's one of the ingredients for high performance. Remember, clarity is kindness when it comes to communication. You want to be as clear as possible. Vagueness helps no one. You want to be clear. That is the kindest thing you can do. The single biggest problem, George Bernard Shaw said, single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. This is when we make assumptions. This is when we begin to think, they should know and they should. Don't make assumptions. Bring clarity. Never, ever leave a meeting with your agency team. Never, ever leave a meeting with a client without defining who is doing what by when. Every single time. No exceptions. That level of clarity will serve you for the rest of your life. One-on-one meetings with my team, this is something that I do regularly, and I know it's such a time suck. I don't have time for all that. My direct reports, we're going to do one-on-ones, and the way I run those, because I want open communication, is that the team member sets the agenda. I don't. I have things that I'm going to bring that I want to talk about, but they start. They set the agenda. You've got 30 minutes, 45 minutes of my time uninterrupted. You've got my focus right now. How can I help? Because my job as the leader is to help you get things done, right? My job as the leader is to pour into and invest in you to help you hit your goals and exceed them. How can I help? The team member sets the agenda. And once they go through theirs, I'll have some things that I might want to share, but they begin. This one thing, I was talking to an agency owner, and he said, "Man, I took this and I started to apply this. This has been a game changer for us. Like all of a sudden, like they set the agenda. I don't have to come up with an agenda for every one of these meetings. They set it." And he said, "I'm learning so much more just from the questions that they ask me, just from the things that they're saying in our meetings, because I gave them space. If you implement this one thing alone in your agency, this is going to take your communication to a different level." Gratitude. Are you expressing gratitude to your team members? Are you expressing gratitude to the people who are working alongside of you? Real gratitude is never silent and it is never invisible. This is why I write notes. I handwrite notes, right? Because that's part of it not being silent or invisible. Gratitude is a piece of serious leadership. Expressing gratitude, according to psychological science, strengthens relationships. It increases overall satisfaction. And by the way, this is true in every part of your life. Listening to their dreams, listening to their goals. I want to know the dreams and goals of every member of my team. I want to know what they want to see, where they want to go. What are the things they want to do? Where do they see themselves? Because I want to help them get there. I want to give them opportunities to develop and grow as a part of our team so that they can achieve those things. Employees who feel supported in their personal development are 3.5 more times more likely to be engaged at work, according to Gallup. 3.5 times. Forget quiet quitting. I want them to be 3.5 more engaged. That's what I'm after. Neuroscience studies show that when leaders take an interest in their team members' personal goals, it activates the brain's reward system. You're increasing motivation. You're increasing engagement. When you empower your team, you're not just communicating with them, you're not just listening, but you're empowering them, not just with responsibilities, but with authority. This will change your agency. You're not just giving them a task, you're empowering them with the authority around that task. When I have team members who come to me and say, "Hey, what do you think about? What do you think about? What should I do? What should I do?" My very first question that I've been using for a very long time is this: what do you think? What do you think? I'd like to know what you think. If I wasn't here, what would you do? Now, sometimes they come out with something I haven't thought of that's a fantastic idea. I'm like, "That's great. Go for that. Do it." Sometimes they come out with something that's insane and it's just a terrible idea. That's okay. Like that happens, right? We have to be honest. That happens. In that moment, control your face, right? Like, don't be like, don't do that. Like, come out with something that's just awful. Say, okay, I see how you could get there. Let me tell you how we do it here. Bring them into your thinking. Help them understand why we do it this way. Now you're coaching them so that the next time they're in a similar situation, they're not going to come to you because they know how we do it here. When you ask this question, you are not just giving them responsibility, you are giving them authority to think and to reason. That is how you develop people into a higher level of capacity. Teams with a sense of ownership perform better and are more innovative. That's what I want to lead. That's the team I want around what we're doing. But it starts with asking them about their goals. Discuss their aspirations, how you can help them achieve those. Empower their decision making. Regularly involve them. This can make a difference. The weekly review that I do personally is when I pre-decide the spaces I'm going to be in, the meetings I'm going to have, and what I want to accomplish in those. That's the intentionality that I bring to this. Remember that John Dewey said, we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on our experiences. That's what I do in my weekly review. Experience does not make you any better. And this is true for your team. Evaluated experience makes you better. After everything we do, I'm asking, what went right? What can we celebrate? What went wrong? And how would we do it different next time? How would we make it better next time? If you think in this vein, if you shift that mindset and everything becomes about evaluation and you do that ruthlessly, this can be a game changer for your agency because now you're learning from your experience and you're always in make it better mode. That's how you serve your clients better. That's how you increase not only team member retention, but client retention. It's by asking the right questions. right? Not just of your team, but of yourself. One of my favorites is this healthy and sustainable? Are we operating in a healthy and sustainable pace here? In my weekly review, am I operating in a healthy and sustainable pace? That one question causes me to stop doing things. It causes me to take things off of my plate. Because if I'm not running at a healthy and sustainable pace, that is how my team is going to follow. In your agency, it's not just your team, though, it's your clients too, because they're watching how you lead. And so often they're going to follow. Is this healthy? Is this sustainable? Am I doing this in a healthy and sustainable pace? The last key to truly catalytic team leadership is a simple one: never stop leading change. Change is inevitable. It is inevitable in your team and in your business. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And remember, you want that, because organizations that don't change, carry new off notes, become museums to another era. You don't want to be a business that's a museum to another era. You want to step into the future. You want to step into growth, and growth always requires change. Growth only happens on the other side of change. Don't forget that. That's not the enemy. Growth is not the enemy. Change is not the enemy. Everybody wants to grow and nobody wants to change, but growth only happens on the other side of change. So, the four keys that we've talked about today: choosing to have a teachable spirit, discovering your wiring and the wiring of your team members, intentionally building up your people and your teams and your agency, and never stop leading change. Understand that's a part of this, because growth only happens on the other side of that. This is what I want for you. This is how I want you to lead in a catalytic way.
I love it. I think if you are watching this, you might have gotten a ton of nuggets out of this. And, the key is to just take one thing and apply it to your business and focus on just that one thing until you feel good about it, or it's at a certain point, and maybe you can even get some of your team members involved and, kind of building some of these changes that Dr. Attaway is talking about. Um, and if you are watching this and you're not part of the high level family for any reason, here's a great insight and a great, session that we're doing that is completely outside of workflows and funnel building and websites and, bunch of code. We're talking about the thing that actually matters most in your businesses, which is how you build the business. So I'm excited that you got a chance to watch this. Tell us what city and state you're checking in from, or maybe you watched the replay. Would love to interact with you. But any final thoughts, Dr. Attaway?
Paul, one thing I would love to share. My new book is coming out in January,
Yeah.
and I'm such a fan of what you guys are doing with High Level. And like I say, as a customer myself, seeing how this has impacted my business, I would just love to give back to the people who have been a part of this today. And if you go to this QR code, I would love to give you the first two chapters of my new book. It's called The Catalytic Mindset. And this is how you think as you are leading your business, your agency, in a healthy and sustainable way. This is how you begin to shift some of those unhealthy, broken mindsets and move into a healthier space. I would love to do that for all my friends here in the high level community.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for watching another episode of High Level Masterclasses. If you're trying to get a trial or maybe just take a look at High Level, there's some links at the bottom of the description. And obviously, the book that William's sharing, check it out. I would say, at least if you're an agency owner. And you were just in Tampa, right, at the POD event with Alex. How was that? Tell us
Yeah. Oh,
a
oh,
few
it's
notes
fantastic.
on what we missed out on.
Oh my goodness, it was so fantastic. There's so many great people sharing from their stories. A panel of agency owners who have cracked that seven-figure mark, sharing from their journeys. I mean, the coaches in that community sharing, practical, super practical things about building ads, about building operations. It was such a great environment where we got to learn from and about one another. And the takeaways that we shared in the last session, so many of the people in attendance shared about what they're going to go back and they're going to do different in their agency, what they're going
Yeah.
to change, how they're going to implement. And it was super powerful.
Yeah. Just as we close out, well, from a leadership standpoint, what was your takeaway from that event with a ton of agency owners there? What are some things that you're going to probably now teach agency owners that you work with from a leadership standpoint?
One of the things I'm always listening for, what are resources that I can share? What are things that I can share with my clients or the people that I speak to help them to go farther faster? And sometimes that's from a leadership and mindset perspective, which is my lane. Sometimes it's not. You know, JB shared from stage about some of the new things that are happening in high level and about some of the things that people don't know about, but that they can implement. And all that does is give me things that I can then take and say, hey, did you know this? This might help your agency. Are you aware of this? Sometimes it's practical things like that. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
broken mindset thoughts that these beliefs that they think have not served them well and they begin to find and replace. And I think that was one of my big
Yeah.
takeaways, watching so many people find and replace things that were not serving their agencies, that they can say, oh, you know what? I can change that. I can choose to change that. And that was a big walk thing I walked away with.
Amazing. Well, thanks for watching another episode of High Level Master Classes. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.